Okay, we're back.
Okay, we're moving into the heavy hitters now. We just finished looking at the light side of the hierarchy. The Koetting is pivoting. He's shifting from the angelic mechanics to what he calls demonic ascension.
And wow, he does not go easy on the human ego here. He starts by basically saying our immoral spirits are fine, but our animal shells are too busy feeling guilty to actually do anything.
Typical. He's basically saying, stop being a moral person, it's getting in the way of your magic.
I mean, he's not wrong about the guilt, though. But look at how he frames this figure to Riaya. He says this entity can just wash away your sins whether you killed someone or just stole candy. It's like a spiritual reset button.
It's interesting because he ties this directly to the idea of subjective synthesis we talked about earlier. He wants you to believe the guilt is just a biological glitched chain from the past that prevents you from reaching that limitless purity.
But then he immediately jumps to Metatron, and the description: a face that looks young and energetic, yet ancient and full of wisdom. It's such a classic archetype. And he claims that after you evoke him, you'll start seeing these coincidences, like suddenly getting invited to the right esoteric circles.
Coincidences. Right, because nothing ever happens by accident in a ritual exactly. He's basically promising a cosmic networking event.
Hey, if an angel can get me a VIP pass to a secret society, I'm calling him. But look at Enki'Dora. That's intense. He's unusually large. His voice sounds like claps of thunder coming from the sky, not his mouth.
And he adds this specific rule. You cannot call Enki'Dora until you've called the previous 5 angels. It's a strict, programmed sequence. It goes back to his claim that the practitioner needs a proven working ritual system, rather than just whim.
And here comes the real hook. He says the modern magician is a coward, that we're all just playing on thin ice, trying to dip our toes into the dark, but hoping we can jump back to the light side at the last second.
Oh, he is dragging us. Dynamic dilettantes, he calls them.
He's calling out exactly what we do. We like the aesthetic of the dark, but we want the safety of the light. But Koetting's thesis is that you have enough to dive into the depths and be consumed by the lake of fire to be reborn without fear.
It's such a violent metaphor for psychological integration. It's like he's saying you can't just work with demons. You have to let the demonic obsession change your very nature.
And he uses that exact phrase, demonic obsession. He's basically admitting that if you do this enough, you stop being you. You become the thing you summoned.
But he argues it's the only way to ascend. He says demons don't care about morality. They just care about necessity. They act like the gods of any civilization. They change the physical reality, period. No good or bad, just results.
Which brings us to Belial, the first demon he prescribed for this demonic ascension. He calls him a king, a gatekeeper. And he's very specific. He says Belial isn't just a demon from the Gotia, but something much older.
He even gets defensive. He says people will argue with him, citing the Goetia, saying Belial is just a fallen devil. But Koetting insists Belial is part of this unique and little-studied group of 4. Abaddon, Amamon, Azazel, and Belial.
And he claims that invoking all 4 together causes a physical materialization of gates. I mean, talk about a high stake. If you mess up that math, you aren't just getting a bad vibe, you're opening a door to spiritual sacrifice.
Okay, I'm staying with my tarot cards for now.
But look at the way he ends this chunk. He mentions demonic formulas, short, rhythmic incantations. He says some people believe these were given by the demons themselves.
It's that loop again. The tool comes from the entity, which reinforces the reality of the entity, which makes the magician even more subjectively synthesized into the system. It's a closed circuit.
A closed circuit that ends in a sandstorm of presence. He says Belial's arrival feels like a suffocating sandstorm. Honestly, if I felt that, I wouldn't be checking my notes. I'd be running for the exit.
Okay, so we're looking at the actual mechanics of the Belial ritual now. And look, he isn't even being subtle about the how-to. He says the altar must be positioned toward the west or the north.
It's so clinical, like a recipe for a cake, but the cake is cosmic dread.
Right. But then he moves from the physical setup to the verbal. He says you don't just say the name. You have to recite the demonic formula, Lorik Tasa Befa Wheel She Bilo. And you repeat it over and over until he materializes.
And then, get this, once he shows up in the triangle, you don't just say hello. You command him to open the very gates of divinity and bring hell into your life.
Jesus, talk about commitment to the bit. Most people are just trying to get their landlord to fix a leak, and this guy is asking for an infusion of the abyss.
But look at what follows. He says the first response from Belial is usually a test. He might give you a task that seems meaningless.
And he warns you, if the demon senses fear or uncertainty, he will use it against you. He might take on terrible forms or use a threatening voice just to see if you'll break.
That's the part that gets me. It's a psychological interrogation.
But he provides an out. He says if you're being tested, you counter with absolute authority. You say, Belial, I summoned you so I could raise my throne above the throne of God.
Whoa, now that is a power move.
It's incredibly arrogant. And he acknowledges that the Middle Age or medieval practitioners would see that as a threat. But he claims the real practitioners know that worship is for the dying, and what demons respect is power.
It's such a stark break from the tradition of reverence. He's literally saying, don't bow, just dominate.
And it's not only Belial. He moves to Azazel next. He calls him the demonic Prometheus. He's the one who brings the knowledge and power that leads to spiritual decay, or, if you're the practitioner, divine self-confidence.
I like the way he describes the summoning of Azazel. He says you just have to say the name, and he's already there. And you enter a state of oblivion by repeating the name until his ancient power seeps into the temple.
It sounds a lot like the subjective synthesis he mentioned earlier. You're basically hypnotizing yourself into believing the room is full of black angels.
But look at the result he claims. He says Azazel can teach you to create your own meditations and rituals to increase your natural power. He sees the God in everyone and tries to force that omnipotence to the surface.
It's so expansive. But then he brings in Aosoth, and this is where it gets really weird. He says Aosoth has no fixed gender, no fixed era, and can even take the form of the practitioner themselves.
That's some serious mirror magic right there. That's terrifying.
He actually shares an entry from his very own journal here. He says when the sigil of Aosoth came to life, the entity's presence burst into the room. He describes seeing the entire universe, planets, comets, suns flashing before his eyes like an ethereal screen on the edge of the abyss.
And then, of course, he has to include the cautionary tale. He says Aosoth warned him to be vigilant because people close to him wanted to do him harm. And then, boom, a week later, his entire occult order collapsed and left him swimming in waters full of sharks.
That is incredibly specific. It's like he's trying to prove the ritual worked by showing the real-world chaos it caused.
The magic is real because my life is a mess. I mean, it's a pretty convincing argument if you're into that kind of thing.
But he wraps up the section with Adlamelik. And here's a great catch. He says the animalistic descriptions of Adramelech the peacock, the mule legs are only there because the magician expects to see them. If you don't expect it, he just appears as a very large, very muscular human.
So the demon is basically a shapeshifter based on your own biases? That's just confirming his whole thesis that the ritual is all about the practitioner's state of mind.
Exactly. It all comes back to the demon's self and the dark alchemy. He's building this massive architecture where every entity is just a tool for the practitioner to reach their own demonic self.
It's a heavy way to live, to constantly be looking for the gates to divinity through the paths of destruction.
Honestly, after hearing about the sandstorm of Belial and the sharks of Aosoth, I think I'll just stick to the pizza and the munchkin game for tonight.
So, we've been talking about the command aspect, but Koetting is pivoting again. He's moving into the idea of the pact, and he starts by making this distinction between a standard evocation and a demonic contract.
And he's being very critical of the standard way here. He says that in traditional evocation, you're trying to force the demon to cooperate just for the mage's benefit.
Which, let's be real, is how most people approach everything. Do this for me, give me that, and don't be too difficult.
Exactly. But look how he defends the pact. He says the pact ensures both sides are satisfied. He actually calls out two major misconceptions here. The first is that if the evoker doesn't see a direct, immediate exchange of services, then the demon isn't getting anything.
Right, like, I didn't see a bag of gold fly out of the triangle, so clearly the demon is working for free.
And the second one is even more biting. He says it's pure ego to think that because the mage hasn't personally received a physical gift, they haven't given anything back. He says we ignore the fact that these ancient, wise, and powerful entities existed long before our first spell.
He's basically saying we're being incredibly rude to our hosts.
I love his analogy here, though. He says, look, if someone puts a plate of delicious, fragrant food in front of you, do you ask the host, okay, what are you going to give me in exchange for me eating this?
I mean, if it's a buffet, I'm definitely asking about the dessert menu.
But he's serious. He compares it to passion. Do you ask what you'll get in return for lovemaking? He says, just like it's human nature to eat, kill, and reproduce, it is the very nature of demons to dominate. They aren't interested in services or mediocre minds. They want power.
Ugh. So basically, you can't bribe them with your little human trinkets. They want the manifestations of power.
And here's the big mythbuster. This is the part that always gets people. He says the most common myth is that the mage's soul is traded for worldly goods. He says demons have zero use for human souls.
Wait, what?
No souls? No selling your soul to the devil for a Ferrari? That's kind of a letdown, isn't it?
He's very firm on this. He says they don't have crystal prisms to store captured souls. They don't care about your eternal essence after death. What they want is a challenge. They are waiting with bated breath for an evoker to give them a task that actually requires their supernatural strength.
So they're basically just bored cosmic mercenaries looking for a heavy lift.
Exactly. And he says a true pact isn't a transaction, it's a partnership. You work together toward a single goal, Ascension.
And he describes this incredible technique for when you have a settled pact. He says you don't even need a full ritual anymore. You just enter a meditative state, say the demon's name, or a word of power they gave you, and suddenly, the room is filled with their presence. Not as a physical body, but as transparent energy, just waiting for your command.
That sounds like a recipe for losing your grip on reality.
He actually tells us how to command them in this state. He says, create a clear mental image of the result you want. Strip away fear and doubt, feel the demonic forces surrounding you, and give your command as simply and clearly as possible.
That's it? Just, hey Belial, do this.
He suggests a bit of a conservative approach, though. He says it's best to start with, in the name of, I command. And this is crucial, always set a time limit.
Yeah, he warns that the longer the contract lasts, the more spontaneous and unpredictable the effects become.
Spontaneous is a very polite word for chaos.
And he proves his point with a story about one of his students. The student had a pact with an ancient demon. The demon sent 3 familiars to stay with him. Suddenly, the student's every thought and dream started affecting the physical world. There was no gap between thought and action anymore.
That sounds like a nightmare. One bad mood and you've accidentally leveled a building.
Which is why he emphasizes, set a time frame, and when it's over, call the demon back to thank them, and release both parties from the bonds of the contract.
Because apparently even the demons don't want to be stuck in a permanent roommate situation with a human.
But then, he takes a dark turn. He says the least acceptable way to use demonic power is through voluntary submission.
Here we go. The bad idea section.
He says if you choose to submit your will to a massive demon, you are moving toward absolute darkness and true evil. He says the demon will start with small tasks, tiny sacrifices, just to test your obedience.
And then, once you've done a few, the demon starts reshaping your entire life to look more like the hellish worlds.
I can see where this is going. It's not exactly a wellness retreat.
He even mentions that people end up committing crimes because the demons help them do it without getting caught by the authorities.
The magic worked. I'm a criminal now.
But he says the real danger isn't just the crime, it's the psychological trap. He says some mages try to use demons to satisfy their secret whims because they aren't brave enough to do it themselves. But a true demon won't just fulfill your little desires. They will force you to do things you thought were impossible. They will force you to live a completely different life.
It sounds like a total deconstruction of the self.
And he ends this section with a massive warning. He says this kind of submission can become an addiction stronger than any drug. He warns that those already on the edge of losing their enough minds will cross a line where they can never regain their own will.
And the demons will just live in them, like parasites.
Well, I think I've had enough demonic energy for one episode. I'm going to go find some more of that pizza.
I think we're all with you, Paco.
Let's take a breather before the heavy stuff completely breaks us.
Total agreement. Let's just jam it out for a second.